Bem, boa noite a todas, todos e todos, né, nessa novo evento que nós estamos tendo aqui, né, na 18ª Semana de Letras do CPAN. Gostaria de agradecer a participação, né, do público, né, em primeiro lugar, que vocês estão aí me assistindo pelo novo canal do LALAEC, que estreou esse ano, né, espero que vocês já tenham se inscritos, né, a ideia é que nós tenhamos constantemente atualizações, vários vídeos de interesse, principalmente acadêmico, tá? Vocês devem ter notado pela programação que ela está trilingüe, né, em inglês, espanhol e português. Então, algumas palestras elas devem ocorrer em língua inglesa, outras em língua espanhola e outras em língua portuguesa, tá? Com seus respectivos mediadores. Vocês podem se sentir à vontade para fazer perguntas na língua, qualquer uma dessas línguas, né? And having said that, I'd like to introduce Professor Marília Mendes Ferreira. She teaches applied linguistics in English at the University of São Paulo, at USP. Her postdoctoral research was at the University of Bath in Great Britain. She's specialized in Vygotsky, teacher education and academic writing. She's also the coordinator of LAC, Laboratório de Letramento Acadêmico, also at USP. She has published about beliefs in academic writing, in plagiarism as well. More recently, she has published an article about the levels of proficiency in English in a comparative study between Argentina and Brazil. I will put the link here, so if you have a curiosity or if you want to read her newest article. And now I'm passing the word to you, Professor Marília. Thank you very much for your participation. And I'm sure our students will learn a lot. Not only students, but also the spectators, right? they will learn a lot from it today.
Well, thank you, Carlos, for your introduction. Thank you for the invitation, for considering my name to be part of this event, which is very important for the undergraduate students in Letras in this university. And I'm very pleased to talk about something that I'm very fond of, and not only because I study it, but because it's the main object of study in our lab, which is academic literacy. So anything that involves writing, regardless if it's in academic context or not, it's something that I'm very interested in, and it's always a pleasure to be talking about writing, reading literacy, and to help students with these tasks. Okay, so what I've chosen today, right, let me see if I hope you can see it now. Okay, so I'm sorry, but I didn't make it totally monolingual. So we're going to have here English and Portuguese in the slides, but I will speak in English, okay? So my goal today is to talk about how can we integrate reading and writing in the academic context. Okay? And from note-taking to the final paper. As we are talking to undergraduate students, we are not going to talk about a manuscript to be submitted to a journal. That's not your reality yet. But all of us as students had to write final papers or essays or short written assignments for discipline. So that's the context I'm considering here. And any writing starts with reading. Okay, that's obvious. But how from the reading you had to read a book or some assigned readings to produce what the instructor has asked you to? So there is a long way. And that's what I want to talk about today. Your path, or give you some hints, or call your attention to certain things that are relevant between this path, between the readings that you read until you submit this final paper for your professor. Okay, and if we don't organize accordingly, that can be very problematic. You can suffer a lot, but the idea is for you not to suffer. That's the purpose of this talk. Okay, so just the outline of my talk here is to talk a little bit about the importance of academic literacy, regardless of the language in academic settings. Okay, and literacy here, I mean reading and writing. So reading, what are the goals? What kind of reading do we have? Writing, and the integration. How can we interconnect them? And so we have a couple of ways to do it, and through genres, like synthesis of texts, outlines, notes, and then give some strategies for you to deal with that. And then the conclusion. Okay. So I would like you to put your camera on this QR code, and this will lead you to a form in which you will answer some questions, just to see where you stand in terms of your note-taking, what you do, if you take notes at all, in what situation. So I'm going to give kind of 3 minutes for you to do this. And please let me know if this is working. We tested it. So if it doesn't, we have to do this in another way. But please check if the image is working and let me know, because then I will give you a couple of minutes to answer it. Okay. It's asking for permission, right? Yeah, I don't know how to get these things. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I can do this way. I just put the questions here, and you just, actually, it's, I think, 4, so it's not a long form. So, and you just try to answer, if possible. If there is no way for you to send me the answer through the chat in YouTube or whatever, you just take note of your answer, okay? Because then I would like to later have an overview of what you answered. Because in this form, I'm asking you how you read for the tasks you have at the university. If you read and take notes, if you just read, or sometimes you read and take notes. That's the first question. How do you read for the tasks you have to take to do at the university? You read, and you always read, and that's it. You read and take notes, or sometimes you read and take notes. Can I ask the other one? Well, okay. I can try to project. Okay, let's see if I can. Let's see. Yeah, well, it's gonna take. Let me see if I can just copy and paste here. Let's see if it works. Okay, just a minute. It's not. Let me see if I select all. Sorry about that. Okay, I'll give it a try. I'm not gonna. Yeah, I don't think this is gonna work. So, the first question was, how do you read? If you read and take notes, you just read, or sometimes when you read, you take notes. The other question is, what are your notes like? So describe me your notes. You use highlighters for the things you think it's relevant. You take notes using your handwritten in the PDF, in the text. You summarize things, you outline the text, or some kind of notes in another file. For example, index cards or a sheet of paper. Okay, so I'm asking what is your notes like? Highlighting, you write something on the text near the paragraph or in the margins, you synthesize the text, you summarize the text, you outline it, or you take notes in another file, for example, a sheet of paper or in an index card. Even if I don't know your answers, thinking about these things help you to think about your note-taking practices. The other question, where are most of your notes? So assuming that you take notes, where are they? In the hard copy text where you take notes using your handwritten notes. You have a file in the computer or in Google Drive or OneDrive. You have a notebook where you take notes, or in loose sheets, index cards. So where are most of your notes? In the hard copy text where you take your handwritten notes, in a file where you put in the computer or in Google Drive or OneDrive. You have a notebook where you keep your notes, or in loose index sheets or index cards. In another question, the last but one. So how do you assess the usefulness of your notes to write a paper later? So think about your notes and how useful are they to write a paper later? One, not it's not really useful. Number two, useful, very useful. So one would be little, two would be just useful, and three, very useful. So how do you assess the usefulness of your notes to write a future text? Final paper, an essay. One, not very useful. Two, useful. Three, very useful. So I'm trying to put you in a situation where you assess your own notes. And the last one. When you take notes, do you distinguish the ideas from the different voices of the text and your ideas? So in your notes, is it clear who said what? The author's idea, the author that you are summarizing, the author that you are reading, and your own ideas? Yes, no, sometimes. So I'm asking again, when you take notes, do you distinguish the voices of the text, the author of the text, and your own voice? Yes, no, or sometimes. Mhm. So these questions I'm asking you is for you to reflect a little bit, if you didn't have a chance to think about your note-taking skills, what you're doing. Do you take notes? When? What for? Where? All this can make a difference. Okay. And what kind of journals do you use? Just some keywords, or no, I like to summarize, I like to produce an outline. Okay. And really evaluate if your notes are useful. And when do you notice they're useful? That you can produce texts based on these notes. If you have to read the text all over again to produce another text, to write another text, well, maybe you should reassess your strategies, your note-taking skills, strategies, right? So this is, okay, how can let's go back to, okay. So, okay, we were here, right? So, reading at university. That's one of the things that we do most, especially in humanities, social sciences. And we read a lot at university for each discipline. And of course, we have to read exactly to have access to what was produced before, to be updated about the subject, what people are talking about, what people are discovering, what are the findings, what people are thinking about this particular topic. So to get updated about it. And of course, we read to learn. But how do we do it? Well, there are different types of reading. Of course, the basic one, which is not at the domain of the university, which is decodification, early reading and writing. But this is the basis of it. And then we have intertextuality, the connections. One text always refers to other texts, to other voices, to other things that were published or said. So it's expected that you make connections. And even if the text does not make that connection, you as a reader can connect. Well, this resonates with what this text that I read. It seems they connect. They're saying something that are related or the same. So you establish connections, even if the text does not do that for you for a particular text. And of course, your own voice. So you should have a critical view. You should have critical reading skills, in which you have to question, you have to read between the lines, you have to identify hidden ideologies. All this you have come across in university. And as you move along the semesters and disciplines, you learn that. More guided or not, but that's what expected, the kinds of reading that you expect. But one thing that's oftentimes, I think, two kinds of reading that is not really focused sometimes. When you read, not for content, not to be critical, or is to read to learn how to write, how this text was organized, how the ideas were shown, which we call rhetorical consciousness raising. When you read not for the content, but to understand how the text was really structured. So, for example, wow, how can I criticize in a polite way, in a polite academic way? Well, we have to see how people did that. How can I show the different voices without mixing and being inaccurate in my paraphrase? Well, let's see how people do it. So when you don't read for content, because we are so obsessed with reading for content, and I understand that, but we who are in English or languages for academic purposes, we have to teach students, well, you have to see how your area behaves, how they write. So you have to read also for the structure, for the organization of ideas, the terms they use. So that's one type of reading that oftentimes we don't focus. And it's connected with the other one, reading to produce something else. I think that makes a difference. When you read something and there is no writing intention behind it, But in academia, in college, there is always some writing involved. Even if it's an exam where you're going to sit and put all your equations, this is writing as well. And people are going to test your math skills. This is done through writing, using a particular kind of language, which is math. So this kind of writing, usually we focus on writing, but oftentimes not thinking about, okay, what I'm going to read after that. And we learn that when we are in the university, and you have to publish. Because everything that you do and you produce, it's going to come out to be a product, publishable somewhere. And for undergrads, maybe you have to think, well, it's my discipline, is what I have to produce for the instructor to get my grade, and for learning what the assessment plan of the discipline. So that's the goal here today, thinking about reading and something that you have to write later. It's not reading for the sake of reading, it's reading for the sake of writing. And that makes a difference, because then you have to think about your note-taking skills. So how do I know that my reading was efficient, my notes were efficient, and which language to use? Well, I'm assuming here that academia is at least bilingual. You cannot in academia just operate with one language. Oh, even if just for the reading, I'm not going to write in that language, additional language, I'm not going to speak, but probably you're going to have to read something in another language. So mandatorily, it's at least bilingual. You know, it's your first language and another language, additional language. So let's talk a little bit about this. Okay, going back. So we'll go back to this later. Okay, so these are just questions for you to start thinking about. So why? Okay, so we talked about the importance of reading in the university, in higher education. What about writing? Well, writing is crucial because that's the means through which we share the knowledge produced by humankind. So it helps to learn. So we have this writing to learn movement, writing as a means for you to learn concepts, for example. To learn the disciplinary culture, as I was explaining earlier about developing consciousness raising. You read to understand how that community, the philosophers or the engineers or the doctors or educators write, and I have to observe how they write, and then I can reproduce that as well. And of course, is very important for careers. For students, is very important for their lives, because writing is a big part of assessment in higher education, not to mention the other levels of education. So here, as I said, writing is at the heart of academic practice, and academic literacy cannot be understood simply as textual and psychological, because there is social factors affecting writing as well, like affecting lives. Your life as a student and my life as a professor. So maybe we have different goals with their writing, but it's writing. We have, for example, an internationalization, and we have proficiency exams, which has a written exam component. We have letters, recommendation letters or personal statements, in which you have to explain why you are applying for a certain scholarship, and then you write a genre called personal statement, which is part of the process of selecting students for that particular scholarship. So you have genres that are very important, and we have to learn, and they are part of this activity. And also publication and really publicizing the knowledge that we produce. So, and writing is still, and I think we do continue being very important as a way to keep this whole bunch of knowledge and culture being transmitted to future generations. Okay, so we have some definitions of writing. How can we see writing? If we think about the one in the middle as an autonomous system, well, you can think as like autonomous texts, like something we all experienced in schools, in which we had to write a composition, okay, write about something or write about your vacation, and disconnected with anything, and you have to produce a text. And usually to prove what? To prove that you know grammar, especially in if it's a foreign language, and you write to prove that you know the grammar. Usually the grammar topic that is being taught in that unit. At the end of the unit, you have a writing task, which is gonna create the opportunity for the students to use the grammar topics and vocabulary taught in that unit. That's typical in textbooks in any language school. Writing for the sake of grammar teaching or grammar testing or checking or practice. So it's autonomous. So it's totally disconnected from activities, from social context, or from practices, language practices, which is the idea that discourse and genre brings, that language is not this isolated system or isolated sentences. So here we have this public debate about the higher education, and it's a model that separates language, writer, and context. And you see the students as identical and isolated, trying to acquire a set of competencies, regardless of their identities, purposes, and disciplines. So what this excerpt is trying to criticize is exactly writing as an autonomous system. So writing is embedded in social practices. And if we think about the university, well, a good way to make it very clear is disciplines. If you take the ways engineers write or biologists are different. If we stick to our letras world, let's not think about other areas, but just our area, letras, you're going to have literature disciplines, you're going to read literature texts, and you're going to have something more linguistics or applied linguistics driven texts. They're different. They're different, of course, because of the content, but the way they write. They section or they do not section the text. What are their preferred words? What kind of arguments? How you organize the ideas? Different. By the way, very, very different. And it's interesting that as far as I know, as a student and as an instructor in Letras courses, this is not emphasized at all or enough for the students in Letras. You have two different communities, you have two different disciplines, at least, not to mention translation. Because in my where I teach, there is all that are also translation disciplines. So it's you have one more, or linguistics driven. So let's say language and literature, you're going to see that they write very differently. And I'm not sure students of Letras are aware of these differences, and or they are called attention to it, and they should, because Letras students are going to be literacy brokers. Letras students are going to be teachers, or help other people. They're going to be writing teachers, or help other people with their literacy needs in English, for example, with an additional language for academic contexts. So you need to know about these differences. And this is where we are in Letras to make these differences clearer for the students. So that's important, this concept that it's disciplinary. So you have to understand minimally how these things, how they differ. All right. So we can think about writing as literacies or practices, and also writing varies depending on the purposes and the context that they are. Writing is cultural. Sorry. You can see cultural as disciplinary, because a discipline is a culture. And it also institutional. So if you think about writing in the corporate world, it's going to be different from the university, because here's higher education. The corporate world is another kind of setting, so it's business. They require other kinds of genres. And one way to understand that also is to see the types of genres that students have to write. So if you have friends that are taking engineering or are in medical school, the kinds of genres they write are different from yours. So having explained a little bit the importance of reading and writing, going now more specifically to note-taking. So I'm going to show you here some strategies, some ways to go around this. And my suggestion is, remember, at first I asked you to assess, okay, how are my note-taking skills? Self-evaluation, 1, 2, 3. Useful, very useful, bad things. And here, maybe these strategies you have never heard of, but my recommendation would be give it a try, because you cannot say that the strategy works for you or not unless you try it. If you stick to the same patterns, well, the possibility of changing and improving, I think, is going to be low. So this SQ3R method means you survey, you question, you read, you recite, and revise. So this is very interesting, for example, for classes, not necessarily for reading, but I think it can be adapted to reading. So it's a way to guide you to read. So you're going to scan the text and identify the structure. Do you need to read this text? Because in the university, the amount of reading is huge. And actually, it's so much, and so much is published, or if you have so many papers in here, pay attention to what I'm going to say, because I don't want to teach you things that bad strategies. Now, the point is, you have a huge amount of things to read. So you have to read effectively. And part of this reading effectively is to select what to read. Of course, maybe the professor will say, well, you have to read this, and this text. Okay, they are mandatory. There's no way to get out of it. But there's always some reading in which you have to complement your paper. You select on your own, and you have to decide if you're going to use them or not. So these are the texts I'm talking about. So you have to scan if they're going to be relevant for you, if you're going to keep reading it. You don't read everything well all the time, and you don't read the entire paper all the time. There is a selection process before that, which is the scan. Ask yourself about each section. What do you expect to discover? So kind of interacting with the text and trying to predict what it's going to say, looking for keywords, reading parts of the text. That's why we read an abstract. That's why sometimes people have different strategies, like the abstract in the introduction or the abstract in the conclusion, in a way to assess the text so that you put that in the to read file that you have in your computer. And then you read the whole text quickly, don't stop, so you can assess everything. And then recall back your questions. And then review important sections slowly. Remember why you are reading. This is important. So you see, there is this scanning first, reading very fast, and then reading slowly and carefully, but having in mind the goal. Why am I reading this? Because if this is not clear, we end up doing what? Maybe we're going to forget or disconsider text that might be useful for us, or you lose a lot of time on a text that maybe what you need is just part of it. For example, if you are reading this, are you reading this text to define or explain a particular concept in your paper? So that's the goal. You're just reading to try to get the definition. Here's the definition. He mentioned blah, blah, blah. I'm going to paraphrase it and cite it. That's why you're reading it. So it's very important not to forget the goal of your reading, which is connected to your writing. And oftentimes we do that. And then that's why we lose time. The the Cornell method, this is especially for lectures, for writing, for lectures, audio material. You have the note-taking area where you take the notes. You have here the comments part, and then a summary, an overall summary of what happened, that you write it later. This class was about blah, blah, blah. And here you take notes the way you prefer. And here you have some questions, and here you have the summary. For example, here, written after class, brief summary highlighted, written soon after class, anticipated, main ideas. So you whatever you see, even for example, vocabulary. That word is interesting. That expression is interesting. So you put important things as well, or things that you think about based on the notes. So, and there is this layout. There is this fixed layout. You have the mapping. Here it's a very simple one. I mean, a concept mapping or mapping mind maps. It can be much more complex than this one. This is just an example in which you are really more visual, and you start putting these circles and branching them, like here, keyboard A, B, C, and you even have softwares to do that. So again, you're going to see a variety of of options. And at this point, I must say that, well, I'm going to stick to one of that. Oh, Cornell is very good. I'm going to stick. No, actually, what I'm going to show you is that note-taking can use a variety of sources, a variety of tools, ways to do it. And it depends on your purpose. So I can use this mapping, but I can also use Cornell. So we can use a variety of them, and that will make you more efficient, actually. All of them? No. And of course, sometimes it depends on things that you really like or not. For example, mapping, I don't like it very much. Not for notes of a text that I read, unless, or maybe part of it or something that I can try to simplify. So I'm not very fond of mapping, or maybe I'm not very good at it, but I use for certain things. But I have more my preferred ways, and mapping is not one of them. But maybe that's not the case for another person. But I think that the key is to use a variety of them, of things that you feel that you like and that you can do well. Oh, this is the mind map, another one. This is more complex, and actually you have softwares for that. So mind map notes, you have converting keywords, paragraph structure, and then you have branching and branching and branching, and you can do that. This is for visual people. So this one is very hard for me. This one here, I personally can do for certain parts of the text, but this one is harder. So this is the outline, the famous fichamento. Well, probably in your life, in your college life, you have done that before. Professor might have asked you that to make you read the text and gave you some grades, because then you would read the text and be prepared for the next class. And you have this typical layout in which you have the numbering. You can use letters as well, but I think it's clumsier. So you have 1, 1.1, 1.1, and then it goes. The idea is that you branch, and this idea and complements this one, and this one complements this one, and this one complements this one. So as you branch, you have the expansion of the idea. You have subordination. And these two here are of the same value, and they complement it. So for example, this is a chapter called History and Definitions. It's a book from applied linguistics. And then I follow the same structure. Section 1, avoiding defining. I copied that. And then what I decide, what I outlined here, possible definitions of applied linguistics, defined through a functional view. What is this? Understood by experience, work, or the term applied, meaning something practical. So what I'm trying to do here, I'm putting the text in a skeleton form, using my own words, not citations. The kind of outline I'm talking about here is the kind of outline we do in English in Anglo universities. It's not a collection of citations where you copy, or you copy and paste, or you write. No, it's where you put in your own words, the ideas of the text, all the ideas. You don't summarize, you don't select. You put everything that is written in the text in a condensed form. The idea is, this is a very good way to take notes because it can last, especially for texts that are very important for you, and you can later revise them without having to read the text again. Because actually, that's the purpose of the note-taking. If your notes are good, you don't need to read constantly the text. You don't have to go back to the text all the time. The notes should stand for their own, or most of the notes, or the notes that you took about the most important parts of the text. And outlining exercises, conciseness, exercises, paraphrasing, so you can see that it's about text. Well, we can try to do that with lectures as well, but spoken discourse is different and it's online, so it's harder to be more organized. This is very good for texts, and it becomes it's organized and structured, but it's time consuming. So if the text is very complex, you might find it very difficult to outline, or maybe you would like to outline the parts that are relevant for you. Not the entire text, but just the parts that are relevant. So you see a variety of strategies, and each one will exercise something, will demand some cognitive skills. So why should I write an outline? Well, you can have easy access to text in a logical, simple, and clear format. You will still be able to understand the text even if some time has passed. I mean, the better the outline, probably the chances are more chances you have to need to read the text again and again. You can use it as a study skill, even if nobody asks you to do it. You can do it as a study skill, as a way to have your organized notes, and also to help you with the memory of the text. Because of course, if you read a text and you do not take notes at all, the chances are that probably you're not going to remember that text. So you need some kind of work with that text to go to your memory. That's fact. How you organize the outline? Well, usually what we do is we follow the order of the ideas of the text, even the sections, if there are sections of the text. So you can try to outline paragraph by paragraph, for example, and then you have the branching, where you have the relationship of the ideas. Subordination. So what I call subordination, this is subordinated to this. And coordination is this, equal value of the ideas complementing this one. So that's the way it works. And with practice. So probably the first outline you have, it's not gonna be good, but you develop as you practice more. Let me check. So I'm just checking here the time. So what kind of skills we need? Conciseness, paraphrasing, and pay attention to put the page number for direct quotation. So if you are quoting, now this is very beautiful, I cannot paraphrase it, I'm quoting this. Okay, you quote, but you put the page number. Why? Because later when you're going to write your text, and if you need this quote, you have the information. Because when we have a quotation, you need to put the page number, the author, and the year. If you have the paraphrase, you just need the author and the year. You don't need the page. And then it's organized. It's there. For every quotation, put your page number. Because if you need it later, it's easier to find the information you need. There is another one which is called sentence method, which is write every new thought, fact, or topic on a separate line, numbering as you progress. So it's like the bullets thing. I personally don't like this, and I really don't. I don't ask my students to do it, but I know it happens, and people can do it. You put bullets with sentences, just with ideas. The problem is, how do you connect the bullets? because in the outline, you have a logic of the branching. And here, how do you connect? So it can be note-taking, fast, depending on the circumstances you are taking notes, but maybe improvement will be needed later. Charting method. Again, it's more visual, and that depends on what kind of things that you are doing. So, for example, if you're reading a literature review on the text you're reading is a literature review on teaching English for children in public schools. So you can maybe you can chart by studies. Maybe they are reviewing 7 studies, and then you can put the context of these studies, the age of these kids, the findings, the methodology. So it's a nice way to organize information in a fast way. So depending on the information you have on the text, charting can be very nice. Even for your own text, it's a chart that maybe later you will use, because charts can help the information be reader friendly. Like here, for example, anxiety disorder, you have the types, the symptoms, and the duration, for example. So this is something that are you going to do this all the time? No, it depends on circumstances. And then you can use Excel, for example, for literature review. If you have to do a literature review on a particular topic, so you can put exactly the study, the author, and then you can summarize briefly the text, the central argument, the connection with your paper, why this is important, key theories or concepts that this text uses or adopts, the limitations of the text or of the studied, and related literature. I found the references. These texts are useful. I might check them if I have time or later. And then you copy and paste some references that you got from the reference list. So here there is a part that is missing, and the author, for example, you can do this in an Excel sheet, in Google Drive, and then helps you to compare studies. So, this study here is in this context. This one is in this context. So these are resources for us to make the information more visible. These are useful notes. Are you going to transfer like this for the paper? Not necessarily, but it's going to help you understand and compare these texts. Because the issue is you don't write your paper based on one paper or out of the blue. You have to read other people's studies to produce your own paper. And you have to organize these things somehow. And loose notes or just handwritten notes in the margins or in the comment box of the PDFs, because maybe you don't print your text anymore. You just read in the computer. The PDFs, you click there, the comment box, and put some loose notes there. That can be disorganized. You can also use that for sure to comment a general overview of the text. If you're gonna use this text or not, why, a general impression, put doubts, ask questions to the text, but in an organized way. That's not the only format. You have to do more than that. Maybe that's the beginning. Maybe that's the first note. And thinking about tools to help you with your notes, we have a variety of them. Some free, some you have to pay. So Evernote, you have the free version, and you have you have to consider, okay, what I'm going to use this for. OneNote, if you have access to Microsoft package, Microsoft Office. Workflowy, I think you have a free version, but they also have a premium one. Simple Note, I don't remember. And these last two here, you have to pay for it, okay, because they are more related to about the audio note taking and converting audio to text. But I'm going to give you some examples, and maybe there are others that I don't know. And you, please, if you are happy with some apps that you like for note taking, put please on the YouTube video. So I like to know more what you were learning and doing. Okay, because maybe people should give it a try, and I should give it a try. Okay, so I'm going to show you a little bit from my own work how I use these different note-taking skills. And again, what you have to keep in mind is, again, you have a bunch of texts. Why are you reading these texts? Because I want to produce blah, blah, blah. I have to produce an essay. You have to remember what the instructor's prompt. Okay, what are you supposed to do in this paper? Or a final paper. Okay, so what is the prompt? What is the task? What is the goal? Do not lose track of that. And then you can use a variety of notes for different purposes. Okay, so I'm going to show you, and that's I think that brings the efficiency thing, not stick just one kind of note. Okay, so one of these, okay, I have to show you this, but why? Yeah, I think it's in the other one. I'm sorry, I have to, it was supposed to be here. Okay, one thing is that I think I understand. I have two versions of that, and there is one that I have this, and we didn't. She changed the other one. Okay, let me say, how can I show you this? Because I had the prints of my use of this. One note, I can share here now. OneNote is very interesting because you can attach files. So it's a good way to organize notes and files and images. It's a kind of a notebook. So I use all of them. I use a lot outlining, but if you think about the time, what happens? Outlining is time consuming. So not all texts. If I outline everything I have to read, it's going to be time consuming. So I outline this kind of note taking just for very important texts or the parts that are more important for me in the text. So I tend to outline parts of the text, unless this is a very important text and I need to know that very, 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 very well. Okay. So let's think about it. You are a literature teacher and you have to teach Cortiço every year. So you can have good outlining of Cortiço, because then every year you just read a specific part of that book instead of reading again and again the text. And of course, I have summaries that I have used handwritten index cards. I don't use index cards anymore, but I do use notebooks where I organize my projects. And then I can put notes, loose notes, bullet points, thinking process, because with that I can develop later. So if we think about a project, which in my case is a paper to be published, I will have OneNote, I will have Word, for example, charting for literature review. I can have in the notebook things handwritten, like bullet things. I can also have in Word the outline, which, by the way, Word helps. If you click in a particular place, Word can lay out for you the branching by tabbing. It's easy. And so I have different kinds of notes, especially for collaborative work. That is very nice. So the thing is, you have to assess what is most important for you. I don't know how much time do I have. If someone could let me know, because then I can share some of my stuff here. Although it's not there, but it's in my computer, so that's not difficult. Carlos, how much time do I have? Okay, I can stop.
Vocês conseguem me ouvir? 10 minutos.
10 minutes. Okay, I think I can. I will stop. Can I stop sharing now? No. All right. Okay, so I will show you share screen. Can you see? I put share screen. Can you see it? Let's see. Chrome. No. Window. Here. Now. There you go. I think now. No, I don't think it's gonna happen. No, because they're asking me to put something. Share screen. Microsoft. They have to. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. They're asking me to go to systems. I'm sorry about that. The confusion with the. No, asking to reopen and quit. No. So it's basically, I think that's it. I think you need. I would like to show you, but I'm not able to share the screen or the website, so it's going to be complicated because they're asking me to go to settings. So if you have a chance, I would suggest you to go to these softwares, and if you have other ones, because the goal, the messages, the takeaway is always assess your note-taking skills. Why you're reading these texts? What is the goal? What's the writing task? And assess what different kinds of notes you can take. Something loose, just bullets near them in the margins, or if you need something more complex, more structured, like a summary, like an outline. And by the way, outlines can be a good preparation for summaries. So if you outline a text and then you summarize a text, that's very good. And always in your notes, don't forget that you have to distinguish the voices, because if you don't, that's going to be problematic, because you can commit plagiarism unintentionally because you failed to acknowledge some person's words or provide the full reference of the work that you're citing. So it's very serious, and that's why note-taking is very important. If you are organized, if you distinguish these voices, you will be able to, you will have more chances not to have this problem later. And thinking that you have to paraphrase. Also, something I do in my outlining about voices is to distinguish. So I use quotations. Yes, this is important. I want to quote this part. And if I want to put my opinion, my doubts, my reactions to that text, I change the color. So I know exactly what is my paraphrase of somebody's text and what is my opinion and my reaction to that. So I put different colors. So that helps me in the process, because then I don't have to. And one thing that also in your notes, try to paraphrase, because if you start copying or just substituting here and there some words, and that's what I'm talking about is valid for Portuguese or an additional language, the quality of your paraphrase is not going to be good, and so that affects the quality of the paraphrase, and that can be something also considered plagiarism. So we have to develop our paraphrasing skills, and we do that by practice. And one way to go is exactly in the notes, trying not to copy using quotation marks or paraphrasing poorly. What do I mean by paraphrasing poorly? Well, you just substitute a word here and there, okay? But it's still the syntax, the original text. You changed it very little. So that's a bad paraphrase. You shouldn't do it. You should really use your own words to express other people's ideas. Well, I think that's it. And I'm sorry about the mess up. I had the examples, but now to get them showed you them here is going to be complicated. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Okay, I think actually there are many questions. I'll start with some of them. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to deal with all the questions. I try to organize here. I have like 3, 4 more specific, then some lucent questions from our viewers. The first question is related to the note taking. Actually, this is something students have asked professors a lot, especially they have asked me a lot. How can I develop my voice in the note taking?
Good question. Yeah, voice is always an issue, and it's important and should be an issue because that's usually a dilemma for the undergraduates. Oh, well, where should I put my voice? Because sometimes it's not clear from the prompt, from the instructions for the writing assignment, if they should put their voice or not. I think the first thing is to check the prompt. What does your teacher want? You want to put your voice or not? Is it clear? If it's not, it's worth asking the question, bothering the person, asking the person before the class or after class. Okay, so am I supposed to show my voice or just report people's idea and analyze blah, 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 according to Mr. So-and-so? That's the first thing. Assuming that your voice is welcome in that written assignment, one way to develop that is exactly during the reading. You are reading and you are taking notes. So put your questions. What are your doubts? What do you agree? What do you disagree? Why? What are the connections you make? Maybe there is a connection with a particular text and theory that the text did not do. Oh, I see some connection with Bakhtin. But Bakhtin was not mentioned. Okay, so why? Why do I see some connection? Because here, and here, I think that particular concept applies here. Or you think about an example. So the voice emerges in your interaction with the text. But you have to register that because, if you don't register your interaction, this is going to fade away. So for example, in the outline, I put as a different color to distinguish that this is my own questioning and my own perception. In the summary, after the summary, because in the summary, you are supposed to report the text idea. So after you report, you say something like, I like this text. I like this text a lot, or I don't agree with this text. I think this text has pros, blah, 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 and cons, blah, blah, blah. If you are in bullet form, you have to mark somewhere that this is your idea. Because, I don't know, 2 bullets or bold bullet, something like that to distinguish. Because you have to consider that this is going to be for the future. In 2 weeks' time, maybe, but in 2 months' time, if the notes were done during the beginning of the semester, after 3 months or 2.5 months, you're going to write the paper. Do you really remember? So you're going to be maybe unsure. So you really have to make it explicit using colors or some graphic. In mind map, I think it's difficult unless you put a bow very big. My opinion, something like a bow, a circle, very big. My opinion about blah, blah, blah. You have to make that clear for you because then it's going to makes it easier. And you have to develop. And we start with little things, doubts, questions, trying to make connections, connection with your own experience. Maybe that text is about teaching. You are a teacher. So what does the person describe and report happens in your school? No, why not? Well, maybe because it's a school in Canada, first world country, and you are teaching, I don't know, in the countryside of a very poor state. because you have to know where the theories are from. Most theories are from first world countries, where the educational conditions are different from ours, but the theories come from there. So, and this is practice. You start exercising, and actually this is something to be developed during classes as well, when the teacher is discussing the text with the group. You can see here and there positions, and so this is something to be developed and registered. You have to register and to mark, to show that explicitly in the text. This is my voice, this is other people's voice. This is my voice, this is other people's voice. And that's tricky, that's hard.
Actually, we have many more questions on the chat, but I have a very important one for the end, because I think that, especially recently, academic writing have changed a lot. But I'll leave you one question for the end. Mayara, would you like to? Okay. I'll ask a question, then Mayara will give a question to me here, okay? A second question is about relevance. Students have complained a lot in relation to, I read that text and I handed the summary, but my professor or my teacher said, that wasn't relevant. Or sometimes we read the same text for two different teachers. One considered it relevant, the other didn't. So how can students find relevancy in a text?
Let me see if I get this right. Okay, it happens to you end up having to read this text for two different disciplines or in two different professors. I'm assuming that if they ask it to read that text, it's because the text is important, so it's relevant. Now, but if it's a text that you chose, the student chose on his own or her own to write the text, their assignment.
Yes, it's quite common. For example, I read that text and I wrote a summary, and my teacher said that my points, my arguments, my highlightings, the things that highlighted, they were relevant. And then the other teacher for the other discipline said that no, though you didn't find the proper arguments. They find it very difficult to identify, okay, what is relevant in the note taking?
Okay, now I think I got it. Okay. Well, it depends. Good question. What is relevant? So when I go back to the example of the outline is difficult and time consuming. Oh, so if the book, imagine outlining a book or a very big chapter on a particular subject, maybe you should outline what's more relevant for you for that particular project. So one thing that defines relevance is exactly the goal of your paper, which is connected with the prompt of the written assignment. The problem is not always there is a prompt. What are the instructions? This should be as clear as possible. Even if the professor said it's orally and you have to record it, or you have to write very fast, trying to get and make sure you understand it. So because that defines a lot, including the evaluation, because this comes the expectation. So what is the prompt? What is being asked from you? And that's one thing. And about, okay, you produce the text is not, you came up with different parts of the text that were relevant for you. It depends. For, let's say you have, let's say the assignment is summarize this text. You read, you give a chapter, you give a text, summarize, simply report. The genre is, I'm asking you to report the person's idea. First of all, there is no voice. I'm just asking you to report what this person said. So basically, in this assignment, you have to understand what is the main idea and what are the supporting ideas. So you have to be able to distinguish this, because this is a kind of a school journal. That's a summary that, okay, this is for assessment. So I have to identify the main idea of the text and the supporting ideas. And it cannot change. Now, if you are using this text for another writing project in which you are using it as evidence or, as part of your text, you have to consider what is your goal. Whatever helps you to achieve the goal, that's relevant. If not, that's not irrelevant. So it can be relevant and irrelevant, depends. But if it's not clear for the student in the assignment, or his paper and his or her own goal, that becomes problematic. And that can be confusing. Indeed can be confusing, because you kind of, okay, so what do I do? Always think about your goal. That's why if you remember in the slide, in the chart Excel, there is something called justification or relevance, which is the connection with your paper, with your goal. And this is crucial. There is no writing if you don't have a goal. We have a goal statement. In this paper, I'm going to do blah, blah, blah. And this all leads. It's not patchwork. It's not just to expose to the teacher, to the instructor, how many people you read. That is going to become just patchwork. According to Mr. So-and-so, as Mr. So-and-so said, and it does not lead anywhere. Unfortunately, much of the writing, a lot of the writing we have is like this, but you have to have a goal. The goal is not to report. The goal of the paper is for you to produce something, and probably your voice. And did I somehow answer the question?
I think so, yes. I'm connected in two different screens, so I'm trying to organize what people have discussed. Yes. Another question that I believe is connected with note-taking, but more to academic writing, is for Brazilian students, the writing centers are something new in a way. And the students have asked, what are the benefits of the writing center for note-taking, for writing a paper, or even for developing their own academic writing?
Well, I think the benefits can be huge. It depends on how this is done. Actually, writing centers are common in many parts of the world. It's I don't think today is only an American thing or American higher education thing. You have in many countries, because I think this is an idea that works, because this is part of academics student support, student learning support. It depends on where they are located, but definitely this is not a Brazilian thing. This is not, but I think it can help a lot. And why other countries have adopted the idea? Because it can be useful, because you can have a third party read your text in any stage, even in the brainstorming stage, and help you with tips, with the strategies, trying to identify issues in your paper. Or there is always it doesn't mean that we love find problems, but there is always a problem in people's texts, but there is always something to improve. And there is no perfect writing, and you can exchange ideas. You can have, well, this is not clear, you can improve it. You identify your style, things that you tend to be more wordy, or you tend to write longer sentences. But this is how you negotiate with your academic, with your discourse community, because also you have to think that you this is not fiction, this is not literature. This is nonfiction. So there are conventions of the discipline you are part of. And this is very important to learn. And this is not something that we have to do just as graduate students. Lorange, 2019, has produced a very interesting thesis, and she studied undergraduate students from social science, also computer science, and biology, and how the several written assignments actually were little by little socializing these undergraduate students with the discourse community's way of writing. So very interesting. And he did that with the written assignments throughout the semester, because part of the deal was to make them write like biologists and understand and think like biologists. So we really should care about writing and about promoting it. And the idea is to help and support, because sometimes it's too much for instructors to take care of that. In Letras, it's complicated because I think we should, because we're going to be teachers of writing eventually, or literacy brokers, which means translators or teachers or helping students with their English needs in academia. This is the kind of literacy broker I'm talking about. And you have to help them, you have to understand minimally. You have to learn how to write. Maybe you don't like it, but you have to learn how to write the academic journals. Not all of them. You don't have to understand all disciplines' way of writing. That's impossible. But minimally, you have to have the basic features. You have to understand basic things that will not change. Cohesion, coherence, citation, so that you can help clarity with text, because we need to be clear. We have to be clear, because people are not going to phone you or call you or WhatsApp you. Okay, I didn't understand. What is this? No, the text should stand by itself. That's a principle. You should express your thinking clearly in the text. There is always some, yes, there is, but most of the time you should be clear in the text. Otherwise, it's going to be impossible to keep communicating science and in academic contexts.
Unfortunately, we don't have more time for more questions, but I have one that I think is very important, and I believe would be perfect to finish today's lecture, which is artificial intelligence has come to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many, not only apps, but even websites that promote this almost instant writing, like ChatGPT or even Bard from Google. And the question is, how Professor Marília see this artificial intelligence in academic writing?
Well, I've talked about it. I can send you later the link of a lecture. I talked about it. I don't remember it was online for some institution, or I don't like it, but we did that we had two things about ChatGPT, I think, that LAC promoted. Yes, because that emerged at the end of last year. And for the desperation of any writing instructor, especially instructors in general, teachers, and especially writing instructors, well, there is no coming back from this. It's gonna get better and better, and faster and faster. Then we can catch up. I think the way I'm dealing with it is to make students aware of what are the limitations of these artificial intelligence tools, and then what are the consequences of outsourcing. So one thing is to outsource, because this is going to be outsourced, especially mechanical things. One thing is to outsource, well, I don't know ABNT, I don't know Chicago, I don't know APA style. So if there is something very good for me here that can format all my references for my paperwork, okay, that's fine, because that's mechanical. do you need to memorize the bullet, the italics, the commas? You put the city or you don't put the city, which, by the way, that's very boring. I hate doing that. So it's nice to have artificial intelligence doing these kind of things. Or some aspects of, visual things of slides. But what about the thinking? What writing promotes for you in your work? Maybe in our work, in college, thinking about college students, you are in college. So part of most of the assessment, or part of it, is going to be through writing. So if you outsource your paraphrasing, if you outsource your note-taking, if what are you losing? What are you not developing? So I think that's and to lead students to experience it, to really think, okay, what can be a nice process writing or journal approach or critical, whatever approach one use to teach, an experience that is meaningfully, reachfully, an experience of just, and they have that already because, they use it more and more. Maybe they don't say it. We use it. And I think we should, because how can you make students aware of the pitfalls if you don't understand the tool?
Yes.
It's bad, or no, you have to face it. It can be an ally. I use a lot for translation. Today I was trying to use it to create an email because it was hard for me to. It was nice. I mean, I just put the situation. He came up with this long stuff. Of course, a lot of formulaic sentences. But actually, I said in Portuguese. And I said, well, maybe I can use part of it. So it ended up that I put a situation there. Okay, write an email in this circumstance, blah, blah, blah. And then a lot of things came. I think I used 1 or 2 sentences, but made me aware of, contrasting the situation. No, I shouldn't say that. That's totally off track. But because they come from, from the pool of things that are in the internet. It's algorithm, so they don't think. But helped me, create my own email. But I know how to write. I know the circumstances. What I'm very concerned about are kids. Because if you just, they are in a moment that you have all this and you don't have a chance to really develop your writing, I think it's, for Vygotsky, it's a cognitive skill. I mean, what are you losing as part of your consciousness, as part of a human being? And because it's you are less capable of using language. And language is constitutive of what we are as human beings and of our consciousness. Constitutes it. It's not something aside. It's part of us. So if you outsource this, I'm thinking about actually generations that will live more and more with this artificial intelligence. It's a big challenge for education. And it's not denying or dismissing it. It's facing it.
That's right. It's a fact. And I think it's going to get faster and faster, really.
Faster than us.
There's no other way. Well, thank you very much, Professor Maria, for your lecture. I'm sure our viewers and students have learned a lot. Unfortunately, we don't have more time for questions, but you can follow Professor Marília, right? There is the website from LALAEC. I think we've already sent or posted here on the chat, but I'll post again. And that's it. Tomorrow we'll have a very big day. I'll be waiting for everybody, okay, tomorrow. And again, Professor, thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation. And if you have any questions, you can forward it to me. And we have I can send the PowerPoint later. We have the social media, the YouTube channel. It's just type LAC, Laboratório de Letramento Acadêmico at USP, and you have the social media there, Instagram, YouTube. There are lectures there, materials. Okay. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening.
Yes, to everybody, right? See you all tomorrow at 8, okay? Here in Mato Grosso do Sul. The time is Mato Grosso do Sul. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.